We're looking forward to your leadership. Our next speaker, I can't tell you how excited I am to have Richard Viguerie here. He's a neighbor of mine. He lives in the next county. And I can't tell you how excited I am. One of the best things I can say about Richard, and I have some written prepared introduction that I'll read to you, but I've gone to Rappahannock to the Republican Committee to make a presentation. I've gone to a couple of events up there, all conservative events. Richard is not just a man of the nation. He's a man of his neighborhood. He has been to every meeting I've ever been to in Rappahannock. He's truly grassroots. He's not just a man of the nation. He is a man of his neighborhood. And I just want to thank you personally for that, Richard. It's really important to me. Richard Viguerie is publisher of ConservativeHQ.com and has been a strategist and leader for over half of the 100-year war within the Republican Party between its progressive wing and conservatives. He pioneered the use of direct mail in politics, and it has been said that without Richard Viguerie's innovations going around the liberal media and directly into people's homes with conservative messages, Ronald Reagan may not have been elected president. Today we'll occasionally read establishment GOP apologists criticizing Richard Viguerie for criticizing Ronald Reagan. He was among a handful of conservatives, including William F. Buckley Jr., who spoke out publicly that Reagan had at times conceded too much to the progressive wing. Most conservatives these days don't speak about how Ronald Reagan appointed various establishment Republicans such as James Baker and Don Reagan to key White House and cabinet positions and nominated Sandra Day O'Connor to the Supreme Court. What you don't know is that some conservatives inside the White House quietly told Richard that those criticisms were needed and were having their intended effect on Reagan. In his upcoming book due out this spring called Takeover, It's the Primaries, Stupid, Richard will discuss lessons from the 100-year war within the GOP, what we can do to take back the party from the progressive establishment, and what must be done for conservatives to govern Virginia, to govern America. Richard, it is my pleasure to introduce you. Thank you.
Where you people been? I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting 50 years for you people. As Rick said, I've been around a long time. In fact, I jokingly refer to myself as 003, which means I've been active at the national level longer than every living conservative except two others. Number 2 is Dr. Lee Edwards at the Heritage Foundation. 001 is who? Anybody got a guess? No, Ed's a kid compared to some of us. I'll give you a clue which always gives it away. It's a female. Phyllis Schlafly, yeah. And I travel around the country a lot and bump into Phyllis, if not once a month, 5, 6, 7 times a year. So she's going as strong as I am. I just had my 80th birthday, and God is my witness. I go 12, 13, 14 hours a day, 5.5 days a week, and in love every minute of it. One of the reasons is 50% of the reason I enjoy it so much is for Mark Fitzgibbons over here. The other half is his colleague Kathleen Patton. So thank you, Mark. Anyway, as Mark is half of the reason I enjoy getting up in the morning, you are half of the reason I am so optimistic about the future of America, but you're only half of it. The other half is Barack Obama. Once, twice, 3 times a day, he's going to do something to anger you, frustrate you, upset you. That's okay. Take 30, maximum 40 seconds. Get angry, throw something, cuss, whatever. Then get down on your knees and thank God that he's President of the United States. because I know no other way to save America. For the 50 years I've been involved at the national level, periodically people ask me, Richard, is it too late to turn America around? Have we gone too far down the socialistic road to save America? And I've always had one answer and one answer only. But my answer, I realize in recent years, is incomplete. But my answer was, the only chance I see to save America is that things get real bad real quick. Well, guess what? We're there. The frogs are jumping out of that boiling water. But what I forgot was, even as they get really, really bad, we've got to have some vehicle there that will organize and lead the opposition, and that is the Tea Party. And I don't know where we'd be without you people. And I thank y'all. And I'll talk a little bit more about your importance and how you differ from the rest of the conservative movement here. But as Rick said, I'm writing a book. I'll hope to finish it in the next week or so, called Takeover. And it deals with what I consider the most important political battle in America. And it is not with Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, Barack Obama. It is inside the Republican Party. It's a 101-year-old battle. What happened politically 101 years ago? Anybody know? Teddy Roosevelt, progressive Republican, leaves the Republican Party, starts the Bull Moose Party, splits the Republican vote, and Woodrow Wilson, one of the worst presidents we've ever had, is elected. And we've been battling them ever since. You know, it's very difficult to win a war if you don't know you're in one. So we've had our guns trained on the wrong target. We're over here focused on Harry Reid, Obama, Pelosi, my day, Adlai Stevenson, McGovern, etc. But the real problem is the big government establishment Republicans. People don't like them. And in 2006, 2008, the Republicans lost the Congress, lost the White House, in my opinion, having nothing to do with the Democrats. Had everything to do with the failed, immoral, in my opinion, corrupt Republican leaders. George Bush, Karl Rove, Boehner, Hastert, etc., etc. People don't like them. We've had 4 in our lifetime, particularly my lifetime, most of y'all had the same experience, 4 big victories. 1980. 1984, the Gingrich Revolution contract with America, 1994, 2010. See any similarities there? All led by principled conservatives, and the face of the opposition to the Democrats was not the big government Republicans. It was small government, limited government conservatives. So now we go to 2010, and the Karl Roves, the George Bushes of the world, Denny Hasterts, Bill Frist, the Republican leaders are nowhere to be seen. Who is out there as the opposition to the Democrats? It's you, the Tea Party. It's Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Rush Limbaugh, Hannity, Levin. People like them and gave the Republicans the biggest victory they've had in 75 or 80 years, okay? So, and then we went right back to the old ways in 2012 and had our head handed to us again. So, if we're going to be successful and bring limited government, constitutional conservatives to power, we first got to recognize who our principal opponent is, and it is the establishment Republicans. We are folks like the biblical Jews who could not get to the promised land until they wandered in that desert for 40 years, until that generation of failed, flawed leaders had passed from the scene. We're not going to get to the political promised land until we get new leadership. And we're seeing it out there. We're seeing the Mike Lees, the Ted Cruzes, the Rand Pauls, Justin Amash in the House, and Tim Huelskamp, and others out there. It's exciting. And that's why I say it's the primary stupid. Remember, 1992, James Carville said ad nauseum, it's the economy stupid. Well, I'll paraphrase that and say it's the primary stupid. Because in 2010, I was saying this in 2009, I started, we could see this wave coming that was going to wash out a lot of Democrats. And what a shame it would be if we just had more big government Republicans replace the ones the Democrats. We didn't get enough, but we had a lot of successes. And we can see a wave coming again. And if all that happens is we return more big government Republicans, we cannot expect different results. It's just not going to happen, people. So, by the way, I'm a big believer in challenging in every single race where there is not a limited government, constitutional conservative running, even if you expect to get 20, 30% of the vote. Challenge everywhere. Even in Democrat seats where you may only get 20, 30% of the vote. What happens? Candidates get experience, okay? People volunteer and they get experience. They get experience in dealing with the press, raising money, organizing volunteers. You identify people, you educate, and they're there for the next race. So that's how you become a leader, by actually doing. So we need to challenge every candidate who is not a limited government constitutional conservative. About 10 years ago, I heard in a conservative meeting I was attending, Herman Cain speak. And he used a phrase there that I really, really liked, and I've used it 100 times since then, and I commend it to you. And that is, he said, after you've established the conservatives' bona fides, the number one quality you want to look for in a candidate is a boat rocker. Are they going to rock the boat? We have lots of Republicans in the legislatures around the country, in the Congress. You know, they're not communists, they're not Marxists, they're not socialists, you know, but they're going to go along with the leadership. They're not going to give up their weekend like you have. They're not going to travel around the country organizing and trying to change events that are moving in one direction, cause them to go in a different direction. We need a boat rocker. That's what Rand Paul is. That's what Mike Lee is. That's what Ted Cruz is, etc., etc. So when you're looking for candidates, look for candidates who are boat rockers. 1950s, early 1960s. I'm in Harris County, Houston, and chairman of the Harris County Young Republicans. And in those days, we were winning 40, 45, sometimes we'd get 47% of the vote, but seldom would we get 51%. And we had a two-legged stool in those days. You know, two-legged stool is not very sturdy. And then, in the mid to late 70s, everything changed. We added a third leg to that stool, and that was the social issues. Under the leadership of my deceased friend, Paul Viguerie, also my deceased friend, Jerry Falwell, we began to organize and bring in the social issue conservatives. And we went from 44, 45, 46% of the vote regularly to 51, 52, 53%. Now, we're not governing America. But we're competitive now. We weren't competitive back in the 50s, the 60s, first half of the 70s, but now we're competitive. But in 2009, the fourth leg of that stool arrived. In fact, it's no longer a stool, it's a big table, and that's the Tea Party. You arrived, and it's the fourth leg of the party, of the movement. And the reason I say and people will regularly ask me, well, Richard, aren't they just economic conservatives? They believe in balanced budget, lower government regulation, less government regulation, lower taxes, etc. Says yes, but there's something else too. In 1976, Ronald Reagan ran for president against the entire Republican establishment. He ran against the Nixon wing of the party, the Ford wing of the party, Rockefeller. And Rockefeller seems like it's a long time ago, but he was vice president of the United States in 1976. So he ran against that entire Republican establishment. And Reagan had a wonderful phrase there. He talked about how we need new leadership. Leadership unfettered by old ties and old relationships. The Tea Party is unfettered, untied to these old relationships. January of 2010, I go to Dallas to Friday night be the keynote speaker, just like I'm talking to you all here today. And I met with maybe a dozen or so people in my hotel room before, then another 15, 20 afterwards. And I'm talking to them, asking a lot of questions. And I remember talking to a woman from Corpus Christi, Texas. And she ran a Tea Party group of about maybe 3,000 people. And she talked about how regularly they have meetings. And the local politicians, Republicans and Democrats, will call and say, I want to come to your meeting. And she says, great, love to have you. You come, and tell you what, I'll introduce you but you don't talk. You listen to us. You know, that's the Tea Party. It's unfettered. I know every major conservative figure at the national level, most of them at the state level. I don't have a conservative friend that would talk to a Republican politician like that, but Tea Party does, and I commend you for that. And you exist because of the failures of the Republican leaders. There would be no need for a Tea Party if the Republican leaders had been providing limited government, constitutional conservatism. Rick, if I run overboard here, you pull me off. When I'm in Houston, back as a youngster in the late 50s, early 60s, I'm hearing the seniors, the elders in the party, talk about lower taxes, less government, balanced budget, and I bought into that. I'm 13, 14 years old. I'm a conservative. I wasn't a conservative, just quickly. I'm second generation conservatives. Bo Goldwater, Bill Buckley, Russell Kirk, and Frank Meyer, Brent Moselle Jr. They were the giants. They were first generation, second generation, third generation conservatives with few exceptions. Got involved in politics, got involved in the conservative cause because of one issue, anti-communism. So I'm 13, 14 years old playing with kids in the neighborhood, and they're shooting, playing cops and robbers. I don't tell anybody, I'm not shooting robbers, I'm shooting commies. I came to this world knowing they're bad people. So anyway, I hear my elders in the party talking about all this, and I buy into it. Yeah, I agree. And then I come to Washington in the 60s and 70s, the 80s and 90s. I hear all that, but I hear different excuses. Well, we don't have the House, or we don't have the White House, or whatever it might be. So January 2001, Republicans got everything. Got the Senate, the House of Representatives, the White House. And I can just envision a fictitious, but not so much fictitious perhaps, meeting in the White House. House, Senate, White House leaders, how can we govern in a way that we will govern for generations to come? And they kick this idea around and that idea. And finally, somebody raised their hand and said, hey, I've got an idea. Let's try bribery. The voters got the vote, we've got the money, let's bribe the voters. And they just began to do that, okay? Prescription drug benefit, farm legislation. Florida was awash in federal money in 02, 03, 04. It kind of reminds me of some of those people, quite frankly, who we're upset with and frustrated now, came with the best of intentions. They campaigned, talking about what the cesspool was like in Richmond or Austin or wherever the state capital, or the worst of all, of course, that cesspool in Washington. Elect me, and I'll go clean up that cesspool. And we do. The voters agree with it. And so a couple of years go by, and they send a message back. Sorry, big mistake. I made a mistake. It's not a cesspool. It's a hot tub. And so we... in my opinion, these are they start out as good people, and they just went wrong, and we're not going to get to that political promised land until we get new leaders. The number one mistake that conservatives made in the last 25 years is they became an appendage, they became an arm of the Republican Party. It's very important you keep your independence, But the number one need we have going forward above everything else is new leadership. We need new leadership, and it's in this room, and your friends are around the state. So, mid-70s, things are in a mess. Nixon has resigned, Agnew resigned, our arch enemy, Nelson Rockefeller, vice president, heartbeat away from the presidency. I mean, it's dark days. You think it's tough these days? I mean, you don't know what tough is, because we had no ways to communicate. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Fox. We didn't have Rush Limbaugh, etc. And so a bunch of us, people like Ed Fullner at the Heritage Foundation, Paul Weyrich, Howard Phillips, Terry Dolan, Ron Godwin of the Moral Majority, who's still in Lynchburg today, helping Jerry Falls Jr. run Liberty. We began to talk and say, hey, we've got some ideas how to fly this airplane. It's like we're on an airplane. That plane's all over the sky. So we go up to the front of the plane, knock on the cockpit door. You could do that in those days. And nobody answered. So we opened the door, and nobody was flying the plane. So literally, we all sit down in different seats and put our coffee cups here and our legal pads there. And we begin to meet at my home for breakfast for 2 hours, 8 to 10, every Wednesday for 8, 9, almost 10 years. And there was a period of time we'd reconvene with those same people for breakfast in the evening with the congressional backbenchers. Newt Gingrich, Ben Weber, Bob Walker, Hal Dobbs, Bill Dannemeyer, and others. And we'd plot and plan to the extent there was anything that could be called Hillary's vast right-wing conspiracy, that was it. But the thing that we did that was so important, and this is, now it's 1977, and Jimmy Carter's president, and they've got 2/3 majority in the House and in the Senate, and it's just really looking tough. And so we began around that table, combined with 15, 20 of our friends around the country who couldn't be at breakfast or dinner. We began to say that us at the table and our friends, we are the alternative to Jimmy Carter, to the Democrats in the House and the Senate. It is not Bill Brock at the Republican National Committee. It is not Howard Baker. It is not Hugh Scott. It is not Bob Michael in the House. It is us. And we said it long enough and often enough, people bought into it. And so we acted as the opposition to the Democrats for many, many, many years. And of course that all changed January of 1981 when Reagan came to town, as it should. But that's your role right now. Don't look to Governor X or Congressman Y or Senator Z, for leadership. Don't even look to Carol or Martha or whoever. You provide leadership. Leadership, by the way, doesn't start with people who run organizations. They start with you and you and you and you. And when you've got everybody emanating leadership outward, you've got one powerful organization. And here's how you can show that leadership. I am a big proponent of something that I call the third force, not third party, third force. The left has been highly successful by operating as a third force. If one of the leading liberals called a meeting of all their environmental groups, there'd be 325, 340 show up. If Jim DeMint called a meeting of the conservative environmental groups, there'd be 4, 5, max 6, okay? And think of all the third force organizations the left had, all their anti-family organizations, all their environmental groups, their race-based organizations, their unions, and they all have their own membership, their own agenda, their own source of funds. They don't depend on the Democratic National Committee for that. But they have 10, maybe more thousand of these organizations. We as conservatives need the same thing, because there's a finite number of people who will do what you're doing here. Give up the weekend, really focus on politics. And most people, they're kind of normal, they live normal lives. They're not like us, a bunch of political junkies here. But they do have 1, 2, 3 issues that they're concerned about. They're concerned about their local schools. They're concerned about property rights. They're concerned about taxes in their community. They're concerned about the poor education. They're concerned about immigration or whatever. So you start committees focused on that narrow issue, and then you expand it from there. Many, many liberals today, including Hillary Clinton, got involved first because of their opposition to the Vietnam War. And then from that, it spreads to many other things. So you're not going to be able to sell maybe your neighbors and your friends on doing what you're doing, but you find one issue that is really concerning to them, schools, regulation of property, whatever it might be, and get them involved, and you can span from that. And again, it gives you an opportunity to have many more people get experience as leaders. And we need to have opportunities for all of us to have leadership skills developed. And that's how you develop leadership skills, is by doing. Good to read the books. And by the way, all leaders, no exceptions, are readers. Not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. So you have to read, but you don't become a leader just by reading. By the way, to put in a plug, Rick mentioned I've got a website, ConservativeHQ.com, and if, God forbid, if there's a terrible plane crash or some other horrific thing, a typhoon in the Philippines, we don't cover it. We cover one thing and one thing only: growing, launching, building the conservative movement for limited government constitutional conservatives. So if you want to know some news about the conservative movement, this is it. This is all that we do at ConservativeHQ.com. One other point here. By the way, I've been running my marketing company 48 years now, and I've never seen an environment more conducive to doubling and tripling organizations than the environment we're in right now. My friend, many of your friends here, Morton Blackwell, says that, he started saying this in 2009, and he said it a few times, perhaps I've said it 100 times. People are frightened. They want to hear the sound of the guns and smell the gunpowder, okay? The barbarians are not at the gate. They've breached the walls. They're inside the citadel, and people are ready for action. They're ready to help get involved, and if you provide the leadership, they will be there. So if you don't double, triple the size of your organization in the next 12, 18 months, you're doing something wrong. Just briefly, I guess I can't get away without commenting on this last week's election. It was, many, many ways to look at it. The people thought they were voting, 52% plus of the people thought they were voting for the most conservative candidate. They were dead wrong, of course, with the libertarians. But, and Ken was outspent 2-1, and Ken would be the first to say, I wish I'd done this different or that different. But the reality is he was outspent 2-1, and the conservative voters turned out. They just didn't always cast their vote in the right way. But the number one message that I think came out of the 2012 election, and perhaps in the 2013 Virginia election, is that if you're in a fight, remember to fight. Okay, and Mitt Romney did not do that. And you go out there. If I look at someone here and I say, hey, you're guilty of this sin, so and I say it over and over, day in, week in, month out, and for a year or two, and you never respond, people have a right to believe that's who you are. That's what you're doing. That's improper. So the Republicans run from the issues that they should not be running from. We should meet the opposition head on abortion. They're the ones that want to have federal funding of abortion, partial birth abortion, and having the woman be guaranteed a dead baby in case of a botched abortion. They're the extremists, and we can go on down that list. You know them as well or better than I do. But we've got to take the fight to the left, and we have failed to do that far too many times. Remember, the 4 big victories that we've had was when we had fighters out there. We had Reagan in 80 and 84, and Newt Gingrich with a Contract for America in 94, and you people, the Tea Party, in 2010. So if we want to win elections, we're going to have to engage in the battle. We cannot run from it. We've got to engage. The law of the jungle is eat or be eaten. The law of politics is define or be defined. Okay? And we have not done a good job of defining ourselves or our opponents. Okay? All right, I'm about out of time here. Let me just say, to repeat, it's the primary stupid. You've got to be thinking now. If you start working right now, you're not early. You're not late, but you're not early if we start focusing on primaries for 2014. Sometimes people talk about, I hear this, Richard, Congressman X or Senator Y, such a disappointment to us. He said all the right things. She did this, she did that. We got fooled. Let me tell you, I've got something called Viguerie's foolproof test of whether you're a conservative. It is foolproof. I never saw Ronald Reagan in the 1970s, except that I saw him a lot. But I never saw him in the 1970s, except I saw all my buddies around him. When he'd walk into a room where there's Lynn Knopfsinger, and there's Ed Meese, and there's Marty Anderson, and there's Judge Clark, and Paul Laxalt, and Jeff Bell, they were all around Reagan. So it was logical. When he moved into the White House, conservatives moved in with him, okay? But, so if you know, a candidate is not surrounded by us, you know, count on him, he's not one of us. I'm almost there, Rick. Let me take one shot at our libertarian friends. And I think this last candidate, none of us believe he was a true libertarian. But I've had this conversation with lots and lots of national libertarians. And I tell them, I share your anger, I share your frustration with the Republican Party, with the Republican leader here or there. I share all that, you know, but by running candidates and getting 1%, 2%, 3% of the vote, you know, as you just saw here in Virginia, you know, how are you helping the cause? Tell me this, I say, and always in the conversation this way, tell me your plan to get 51%, or if it's a plurality, how do you get 34%? And invariably, no exception, every single libertarian gives me a version of, I'll get back to you on that. You know, they have no plan. They know how to destroy. Libertarians have great ideas operating in the 501c3 area, 501c4 with ideas, you know, school vouchers, many, many good ideas. Politically, they are a disaster. In 2002, Libertarian Party nationally tried to defeat a Republican congressman that they agreed with on every single thing. They disagreed on nothing except he had the audacity to have an R beside his name, and they tried to defeat him. And his name was Ron Paul. One quick piece of free advice. Howie Lynn, where are you? Howie, this is no invoice will follow this, but I want to tell. I'm using Howie as an example here. I want all of you to think about this. Again, I've got something called Viguerie's 4 Horsemen of Marketing. You got to get these 4 things right in marketing, and life is kind of downhill, the wind to your back. Get them wrong, you're going uphill, the wind in your face. Very important in most anything you do in life. Your personal life, and it doesn't matter. Business, politics. First is position. Position is nothing more than a hole, H-O-L-E, hole in the marketplace. Second is differentiation. How do you differentiate yourself? Third is benefit. What's the benefit? If I buy your product, I vote for your candidate. And the fourth is brand. And brand is nothing more than a combination of the other 3 plus what makes you singular, what makes you stand out. And Howard, just to a little free advice here, you talk about leading the fight to defund, repeal Obamacare, hold President Obama accountable, unconstitutional actions, excessive federal debt, you know, et cetera, et cetera. All good stuff, okay? But Mitch McConnell, John Boehner could sign on to this. You know, so you want something that differentiates you from out there, you know. And I'm concerned about the direction the country's going in, you know, and a lot of it is caused by Republicans. So what is going to cause my Democrat friends and independents say, yeah, he's not like all those other Republicans. He's not like those Republicans that said, I will exempt myself and my staff from the laws that I passed, okay, on Obamacare. They're exempt, you know. Separate yourself, differentiate yourself from these others, and you'll be a lot more successful Tea Partiers, Howie. Thank you all so much. We've been blessed with the blessings of liberty and freedom, and we have an obligation and responsibility to pass them on, protect them, and then pass them on generations unborn. See you at the revolution.
He's certainly one of us, isn't he? Or we're part of him, better said. Richard, we have a little gift for you. It's our rhino hunting hat. Wear it well.
I used to be able to wear this on the golf course. Now I'll have to wear it to Wegmans. Thank y'all.
my heroes. We want to take just about 2 minutes for Nancy to talk about the Senate special election.